All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. This is a late show with your host, Young Brando, live from Los Angeles. Let's get right into it. We have a number of new releases today, some of them really exciting, others not so much. Others might be a little too niche, but in either way, they are great watches. Let's start with the most obvious one. This is something that was very much front loaded by Hodinkee, and they have their reasons. You remember some years back at Bank Climbers Initiative, I think it was 2017, they made this special edition piece in the 39 millimeter Carrera case of the time. And it was called Skipper. And as you can see here in the way they place the watch, that watch actually has as a segment in its 30-minute totalizer a reproduction of this particular kind of blue. They had an entire photo shoot and an entire video shoot, in fact, that celebrates this release, which has them take the watches on the Intrepid, which is the winner of 1967 America's Cup, and of which they have even used some paint chips off this deck to reproduce that peculiar color on this original version of the Skipper, which was an iteration, which was a version of the Carrera, and which was inspired by yachting, by sailing, and in 2017, by using the 39 millimeter case at the time, the original is 36, Hodinkee released a version of the Skipper, which kept the branding, but basically eliminated the continuous running seconds and put a date window at 3 o'clock, balancing it out with the 30-minute counter or 30-minute totalizer at 9. Now, we talked a little bit about how Tag Heuer finally, after all those years, seems to be coming into its own and seems to start owning their own name, which, of course, builds on the legacy of Heuer, which is a brand that has a very rich history in chronographs that were oriented to the world of motorsports, but also towards aviation, and certainly were quite important statements in style, as well as the development of the self-winding chronograph, of which the Monaco would be a great example. Of course, we cannot forget Altavia, even Monza, and especially the Carrera, which, again, of course, takes its inspiration from the world of motorsports, but here builds on that legacy, builds on that history to actually make a stylish watch that has also a kind of nautical inspiration, also an inspiration from the world of yachting and sailing as well. This is the modern version, which builds on the renewed, refreshed glassbox Carrera case. All right, guys, I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, you're talking about the skipper, so I had to come in and say hi because I like the new skipper.
Yeah, you do.
I
What?
do.
Um, tell us more. Which one you like more out of this trio? Between the vintage Hodinky edition and the most new, and why? Let's start with that.
Well, I actually like the vintage a little bit better because it's more of the Octavia case rather than the Carrera case.
Hmm.
But I like the new one mostly because of the date placement at the bottom compared to the old one because of the date placement at 3. I kind of prefer 6 o'clock dates, although almost every watch I have with a date has a 3 o'clock. I kind of like the 6 o'clock better. I also like that they added the seconds sub dial at the bottom where you don't have it on the original. So I think that's a good addition. And I think the timer on the side where they had it in the Hodinky edition, also in the new edition, is also a good addition. So you have the yacht timer. You have more than just the yacht timer like you had in the classic one.
Right. Yeah. You have essentially a modern chronograph styled as kind of nod towards that history of the skipper.
Hmm. Yeah, I like it. And the movement in the new one is a really solid, good movement as well. Um, I'm not sure if it's better than the original. I think it's a tougher movement than in the original. But I really like what they've done with it, and the fact that it does have the display case on the back, so you can actually see the movement. I think it's nice.
Yeah, it certainly has a more extensive power reserve than the old one at
Right.
80 hours. I can tell you that for sure.
And I do like what they've done with the Carrera line with the whole glass box thing that they started at Watches and Wonders and all of the new
Yeah.
Carreras that have come out in the glass box design. I really, really enjoy the looks of that watch.
which was something they did themselves a disservice with the sheer volume of variants they released at Watches and Wonders because that totally went unseen.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that was their best looking watch out of all the ones they did in Watches and Wonders, with the exception of that fake diamond blasted one. But lab grown diamond blasted one. But I think the glass box. I love the glass box. I really love it.
Yeah, I
And
think they had two very strong Carrera releases already, right? They had the 60th anniversary Panda,
mm-hmm.
which was a great
And that was
reproduction.
released in late January, I think, right?
Yeah.
Late January. And then
And then they used Watches and Wonders, like you said, Robert, to introduce that new glass box
the new
case.
glass box case, right? So yeah, I like this watch. I saw it when they introduced it. Was it yesterday or Wednesday when they had the big event in New York City?
Okay.
Introduced. I think it was Wednesday, and I liked it then. I still like it. Oh, yesterday was Wednesday. Hey, what day is it? I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I'm the same
Uh,
boat.
that's why I need to be wearing a day date instead of just a date on my watch today. I swear.
That's a good excuse to line up for something like that. Except, of course, Seiko 5 gives you the day dates in a very charming manner too. So,
Yes.
you
Well,
know,
I have a Seiko 5 day date that I could be wearing. I have an Orient day date that I could be wearing. I have a Casio day date I could be wearing. But I'm wearing this.
what is it? Let's take a look.
Oh, sure. This is my Aqua Racer. Speaking of Tag Heuer.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah, I mean since I don't own, since I'm too poor to have Rolex or AP or
Shut
any of
up.
those other
Shut up.
fancy
Don't
ones.
say that.
Oh, okay. Tag Heuers are my pieces that are at the top of my collection, and I really like them.
Yeah, let's reframe that. Since you prioritize your family,
There
your
you
daughter's
go.
success,
My daughter's
right?
success and my
Right.
future granddaughter who will be here in January.
January. Yep.
Oh
And
my God.
congratulations again for that. So
Wow.
yeah, no, this isn't people, man. Like I've been very fortunate, but like a majority of my watch collection were what people would call shitters. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I bought 2 Squales because I like them,
Oh yeah, I like
right?
Squally too, but I love Tag Heuer, and the one thing I wish that this watch was more affordable. It's 6,200 Swiss francs, which works out to right around 7,000 US dollars.
Mm.
All of the Carrera glass boxes have been expensive when you compare it to the rest of what you usually think of a Tag Heuer price tag. And that's the only thing I regret is I wish that they weren't going or trying to go so up market with their prices.
Yeah.
The quality
And
is there,
that
but the
ship has sailed
prices
for
are
everybody, man. That
I
ship
know.
has sailed for everybody.
I
I, I
know.
think I think that that's it. I mean, a lot of times I feel like, especially at the time of the release, people focus and single out certain brands. Like IWC came out under a lot of censure when they released the new Ingenieur. That was the watch people have been waiting for almost a decade. It was on the pipeline for quite some time, and everyone was so disappointed with the price point. But then you look at how Chopin sells an integrated bracelet piece at a higher price point, or at around the same point. Bulgari sells something like that. Vacheron sells it for much more expensive, right?
Right.
Of course, um, Chapek, a brand that I really do respect, but came out of nowhere, sells it for 25K plus. So suddenly
Yeah, they sell a glorified PRX. Oh my god, I'm so frustrated with Trebek right now.
But yeah, ultimately, the point is, I think all of the brands, in terms of their tag price, in terms of their retail price points, have creeped up, and it shows no sign of stopping, because they made it a habit to have not only annual but twice per year price increases more recently.
Well, and I know you and I were talking about this on JJ Stream I think it was Sunday night, about what Omega's done with their pricing. It's just wow.
Omega's, I don't know what they're doing, man. I really don't understand what they're doing, because they can't deliver watches fast enough. So when they add the price increases on top of that, the optics are starting to look really bad.
I think Robert had his finger on the pulse there, and that's why I think sometimes we shine a particular spotlight on certain brands, because it's a concerted effort, in fact, to upmarket their own pieces. It's a way of placing themselves in the market above 5,000 plus, because it's a lost cause under that. Most people either wear smartwatches, or people have become much more conscious and globally connected, that they go to one of the micro brands and start establishing entire collections at $1,000 a pop.
And there's some great micro brand watches too.
Yeah.
And not all micro brands are affordable. I mean, there's fantastic micro brands that do that upmarket $10, $20, $30,000 watch.
That is true. But what I meant in a way was, 10, 15 years ago, Squale was revival, but it was even niche then. Nowadays, there are 10 different brands that we can offer as an alternative to Seiko. Whereas 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we would just say, you want to watch that's for a couple of $100? Seiko.
That's true.
Why
Yeah.
even think?
Yeah. And now Seiko is up marketed themselves, or up priced themselves, to where they're not the cheap alternative anymore. I think that Seiko is trying to put themselves kind of more towards Grand Seiko territory than what we would consider Seiko 5 territory. And that lower tier is going to be taken up by Orient, which is another Seiko owned Seiko Epson owned brand, I can see that happening too.
Yeah,
Where you
I'd actually like to see Seiko dissolve Grand Seiko into Seiko and have Grand Seiko and King Seiko as models under the Seiko brand. Get rid of the GS branding entirely, and then push Orient more. I'd actually enjoy seeing that.
which is what they use. I mean, before Grand Seiko split off, that's what you sort of had.
Yeah.
All Grand Seikos had the Seiko at the top and the GS Grand Seiko at the bottom.
I think, again, of course, I'm not in that boardroom. I don't know where things are exactly going, but with the kinds of limited edition pieces they create, whether it is for prospects or presage, there has been, in terms of the pricing, that kind of push that really pulls them away, not only from the entry level and Seiko 5, but even from the prospects and presage line, which were right between 1,000 to 1.5 just a couple of years ago. Now they have those watches, but they have watches that are 4K or more.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, JJ, how are you doing?
Good. I'm here
Gentlemen, I'm clearly in the wrong place.
I'm here to learn about watches. What can you tell me? What do we got going on?
We were talking about the new Tag Heuer Skipper release. Did you see that?
I, by the way, really like this Carrera Skipper release. I really like this release, which surprised me because I haven't liked the release from Tag in quite some time.
I do like this quite a bit. I've always liked this style aesthetic chronograph that they do. I think the colorway is really catchy. I like the name. I like everything about it except that nasty NATO right there. But other than that, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, again, we were kind of riffing on this, Ali, a couple of days ago, that, when Michael was here as well, how Tag seems to be finally owning up to their full name and not simply trying to rest on the Heuer legacy. And I think the glass box and the new Carrera collection reflects that. Now they have something with clearly, heritage inspiration all the way back to 1969, but something that, unabashedly finally puts the Tag on the dial, even though the inspirations are clear. It's still a 39 millimeter case, I think right under 14 millimeters thick, so 13.7 or something. 80 hours power reserve, which is, they have an amazing self-winding movement for the chronograph. And I mean, overall, again, I'm like Robert. I'm not trying to pun here. I'm in the same boat. I think it's a little expensive for what I like, but then again, in today's market, I can't protest too much either. The price point is $6,750, and it's a non-bracelet watch too. I guess that would be also, in the column B, in the negative con part.
So John D had the same comment I had the other night, and I think he said the same thing, that they should exclude the Tag and just stick with Heuer. I think Brando made a good point the other night, is that you can't do that because that almost guarantees that they're never going to move forward with the brand and watch designs, right? And I think that's a perfectly valid point. I still am a fan of the Heuer branding more than the Tag branding. But if they don't make that change at some point, if they don't just rip that Band-Aid off, then they'll always have this lack of legitimacy on it. Honestly.
I think they also, Ali, and to speak to something John D is saying, look, in terms of my heart, I'm completely with you guys. For me, Heuer has been always much more important than Tag, and also because I adored Ayrton Senna when I was little, but even that couldn't warm me up to tag. So I have not necessarily any sympathy for tag branding, but they have painted themselves into a corner. They haven't stuck to it. Whenever they did something that had a strong vintage vibe to it, they put the Heuer Solo logo. So at this point, like Ali said, you have to rip the Band-Aid off, because clearly you already invested so much into tag as a tagline. Again, I'm not trying to pun on purpose, in the sense that this is technique d'avant-garde, right? You want to be on the vanguard. You want to be technologically innovative. You want to put lab-grown diamonds on your watches. You want to innovate in terms of the chronograph, which has been your bread and butter from the 60s. So they do have to go beyond it at some point, because clearly they have established that binary, and they have painted themselves into a corner. Either they're going to continue becoming a legacy brand and get rid of all the lab-grown diamond parts. I don't think they're doing that. Or they have to move forward. I mean, even Zenith, imagine the whole brand identity under LVMH for a long time was just El Primero, but they have very consciously broken out of that. So tag has to move on. I think, my mind votes that way, even though I would rather have vintage inspired Heuer branded pieces forever.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you bring up Zenith. That's a good point, because at Watches and Wonders, Zenith was not about the chronograph. Zenith was about their pilot's watch. Those were the two big releases they did at Watches and Wonders. And so, yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And also, to your point, if they're putting the tag on the Tag Heuer on this watch, I'm not sure you ever see another. See, that's a Heuer, but that's the 60th anniversary edition.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, since they put it on this watch, I wonder if they will ever do a dial like that again, where they just do a modern watch with just the Heuer logo on it.
Probably just for special editions. Probably no more regular editions.
Yeah.
I feel like they might not even, the last time I saw their CEO speak, I think this is the Frederick. The last time I saw him speak, it felt like they are actually going to stop doing that. I think that 60th anniversary Carrera may have been the last of a line. So it might be their way of saying farewell, or that's what I thought.
We're moving on. We're finally becoming our own brand. Which is weird to say, because I mean, Tag Heuer has been Tag Heuer since the 80s.
Yeah.
I like the skeleton Monaco, Bob. I really do.
I do not.
I know you don't. I like it though. I think it's decent looking.
What about the absolute hype version of it in this DLC coated titanium and Tiffany blue accents?
Well, you see, I like the Dark Lord, and that's a very similar style of watch, the all black Dark Lord.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't mind that. It kind of reminds me of what Bamford did with the watch, to tell you the truth, because if you look at the Bamford edition Monaco, it is the all black with his Bamford aqua blue subdials. That's very similar to it.
What do you think, JJ? Did you have a chance to look at these at all?
I'm not a huge fan of DLC coated watches, black watches in general. I kind of find this cool though. I mean, it's like, when like you find yourself enjoying a Britney Spears song, it's like a guilty pleasure. This is like a guilty pleasure for me. I feel like I shouldn't like it, but it all works well in this package. I kind of enjoy it.
JJ, the funny thing is the way you are talking about it also sounds like a Britney Spears song. So I shouldn't enjoy it. the column wheel even is treated in that color too, which I actually find endearing. It's
Mhm.
I got the hots for this watch as well. I
Yeah,
like the skeleton monocle.
It's well put together, for sure. I don't know if you saw the. Oh, I'm sure you saw the only watch they did. I thought that was really interesting too. I really like that they're expanding and modernizing the colorways on the monogos. I think that's a pretty good idea. Do you think they're
Yeah,
trying to capture a younger audience? Is that the goal?
probably.
You're trying to capture a younger audience. Fair enough. Not at these price points.
Yeah,
They need to tweak. It's the only watch actually just pissed me off to no end. I said it's a signal to noise ratio issue. They brought a split seconds. Wonderful, right? They could have done it at a much more advantageous price point and made fewer changes to the legendary Monaco in the process. They're making too many changes at once without seeing where it goes in the marketplace. Like, so especially if people like, let's say Cap and Toyota Mo, right, on the Rolex. Rolex makes very slight tweaks, like a winning formula, slight tweak. People call it, it's a revolution. It's a phenomenal new release, and they get all the accolades. The problem is that Tag goes way too far, like especially in their only watch release, like way too far. And I don't think it appeals to a younger audience because at these price points, that younger audience is clearly still buying Hublot. And Hublot's destroying them in the market.
I feel like I could agree with you there, but I feel like I'm finding myself more and more every new watch release saying the same thing, that the prices are too high, and I think this is just what the market is right now, right?
Yeah.
As much as we don't want to accept it, but I mean,
but I'm not saying it relative to watches. I don't know if the price is too high relative to watches. The Longines is where I take exception because I think that they are punishing people that were waiting for them. But in this case, it's the market. Like for the design of this watch, for the younger market, the price is too high.
Yeah, 11,250 is a little much.
Yeah. So there are a few interesting questions. I want to address them all. And guys, just to remind, super chat is an option when you're asking these questions, as much as I love addressing them all. I realized they saved Heuer, but precisely how long was Tag a management element of the company? I think it was mid-80s when they bought
84, I think, was the merger.
And then 99 was when they sold it off to LVMH, if I'm not mistaken. So, about 15 years lit, plus or minus one. 521 Taipei says for this price, they should have put it on the matching bracelet. This is the skeleton Monaco for 11,250. Honestly, I mean, again, I like the Only watch even more, but I'm more in love with its split second design.
Here's the problem with this: the Monaco, right, is already base price a little too high, so you have to go up from there.
Right.
Take, for example, Zenith Defy Skyline, right? Skeletonized watch, integrated bracelet, and it's cheaper than this, right? No reason it should not be. This shouldn't be cheaper, but they're painted into a corner when their base model is already so high. You have to have a higher price on this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the Dark Lord, which was for 9K as well.
Yep. That's
Dark Lord Hellespont.
That's
Darth
that's why I have the all black dial, but not the black case.
Yeah, I like and one of the reasons at least I like the split second is just like in the old school version, they put the crown at 9 o'clock. There was the split second pusher at the 9 o'clock. But yes, I mean, when you start already at 7.5, 8, you you gotta upcharge for these kinds of, for the material. For I don't know which one comes before. I don't know if it's the, if it is that they make these tricks to find ways of pushing the price up, or whether, like JJ said, at the end of the day, this is in a way a more advanced, more tricked out version of the standard model, so it has to be at a higher price point. I don't know which one comes before, but certainly that's how they internally justify that price point.
I think that if you're a brand and your brand regularly gets discounted EADs, right, you need to seriously consider making that your default pricing. I think tag definitely falls into that category.
I mean, in my head, a monocle should be $6,000. This monocle should be $8,500. That's just what I feel in my mind.
And that's where that 20% like pricing comes in, right? Like they should take advantage of that, because if they don't, when the watch market consolidates, and it will, they're going to be left holding a bag. Either that or shelve the brands. I mean, again, I've said it about Breguet and Blancpain. Like, if you're not going to price them competitively and give consumers what they want in terms of the designs, then shelve the brand until you can. Like, don't continue to damage the legacy, like Breguet in particular. Like, I think Breguet is legitimately damaging the legacy with the latest releases.
And we were talking about prices on new releases. If you look, and the Monaco is a good thing to look at, because this version of the Dark Lord was released last year at $8,000, and you see, or $9,000, and you see the new ones are again $1,500 more, or $1,700 more. So, every time they release a new watch, it's that much higher.
Yeah. And
you could get Carrera chronographs from Tag, 2 years ago for about $3,500, $4,000, and everything new is at least $1,500 to $2,000 more.
These are like 20% increases in a year. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And look at Omega. What they three price raises this year? I think they did. Crazy.
And one thing I will say, though, we gripe a lot about watch brands' websites. You'll notice that every time you go to a new watch, it goes to your current time.
Yeah, a lot of the brands have been doing that.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's the only thing I like about their website.
But yeah, I like that they engaged the chronograph for a little bit and reset it. I think it's a nice presentation. I do appreciate that. Fries, our man in Geneva and Belgium, Brussels, I think. Heuer is associated with adoption by Ziffert, X, Rindt, Lauda, Andretti, Fittipaldi, Regazzoni, Amon, and others. Tag still needs to build its legend.
So, Fries, would you say that they're building their legend right now with Max Verstappen?
Unfortunately for us Lewis Hamilton fans.
Yeah, well, I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan too, but you could make the argument that they're building their legend now. And what watch has been on his wrist every time he's on the podium? Well, right now it's the new Monaco, not that one, but the new one that you showed earlier. Or no, it is that one. It's the skeleton. That's what he's been wearing all season.
Yeah. That's true. And Fries adds to that point by saying it's not about the watch, it's about the legend behind it. And yeah, I mean, Verstappen has been doing really well.
But you look at all of those other racers that you mentioned, and they were all given those watches personally by Jack Heuer. That was how he built his brand initially.
And Robert, you were initially right. Apparently, 521 Taipei confirms that the Dark Lord, when it was released, was 8,200.
Okay.
Now it's 9K, and I think now it's sold out, anyways. But yes, they had upped it to 9K before. And yeah, I think I understand Fry's point, but like Robert said, I think it's just a different way of doing business now. Like Formula One at that time, if it generated as much money as it does now, I'm sure they would be paid handsomely for it as well, in addition to being supplied with cool watches. Nowadays, just like the football players, just like the soccer players who are paid, so many times more, the money that's generated from the sport is just so much more, so it goes to show how much more expensive it gets. Ali Reza 2433, let's keep good horological content online with our financial support. Thank you, YB and audience. Good night. Does that mean Ali is signing off?
I have felt like garbage the past day and a half, and I'm running out of fuel.
Okay.
Have a good one. I'll be signing off here too pretty quick because it's work day tomorrow. But
this is way early for me. But I've not been feeling right.
No,
so
I understand, man. Take
you
care
guys
of yourself.
have a good
That's
night.
the most important.
JJ, Robert, Young Brando, audience.
See you later.
Take care, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think it's just a way of doing business these days that they get the watches and the money, and it is what it is.
And I mean, it's not to single out Tag Heuer, as we mentioned. Omega's raised prices here, Rolex has raised prices this year. Everybody's raised prices this year. It's just the way of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also, I mean, IWC has had a long-standing relationship with AMG and Mercedes, of course, by extension. And I'm sure they're paying.
Oh yeah,
Lewis. It's not just the watches that he gets through them.
But they make money back because people want that Petronas watch. People buy that Petronas watch because they see it on his wrist. Just like I'm sure somebody has bought a Monaco because they've seen it on Max Verstappen's wrist.
Hey, Brando, don't mean to cut you short, but I got to cut out. I'm in the middle of something here. Sorry about that. I had to mute myself, but I'm going to be a bit.
No worries.
No problem, man. See you later.
Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
See you on Sunday.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, see the watches on those drivers' wrists, especially with the popularity now of F1, which has truly become a worldwide phenomenon, thanks to Netflix and thanks to races now coming to the United States, including my hometown of Austin, where we brought it back to the United States back in 2012. They're selling watches. I'm not sure how many Richard Milles they're selling because that's a way upper crust crowd, but I'm sure they're selling some IWCs and some Tag Heuers because of their racing tie-ins.
Yeah, I mean, I think Drive to Survive documentaries were incredible for it. I mean, even I think the kind of sports. Incidentally, I think the sports documentary craze may have started with the Senna documentary that was done for Netflix some years back. And after that, it was just like the floodgates had opened. And of course, it has a lot to do with how it expanded. Now there's not only Austin, but 3 different tracks.
Right, Miami is huge. And then they're going to do the streets of Las Vegas later this year for the first time. And yeah, so there's a lot of big money, not only in the teams, but there's a lot of big money that goes to watch those races.
Yeah. And like you said, it's become also, Robert, in a way, it's become an event in the US as well. So especially the Miami one, and I'm sure Vegas will quickly turn into that too. I would much prefer to be in Austin than that kind of crowd. Don't take me wrong, but I think those also became kind of for a lot of American celebrities to show off and show out.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
Yeah,
it's just
especially
like
Miami, and I think you're going to see that a lot in Vegas too. We used to have all the celebrities here because we were the only race. And when Miami came on, was it last year or 2 years ago? Last year, I guess, was 2 years ago was their first one. Yeah, that was a huge celebrity showcase. But we'll still have our fair share down here. And last year, 450,000 people went through the gates over the 3 days.
Wow.
It's incredible. And that's just for little old Austin.
I mean, I'm sure you have seen it with your own eyes how it grew over the years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, in 2012, they were like, before the first one, they were saying, well, we don't know how many people are going to show up to this thing. This is like the local media. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, they might have 150,000 there. And I think the first year we had over the 3 days, we had about 300,000. And it's blown up from there to where this year they're thinking maybe 500,000 over the 3 days.
Yeah. And also, I mean, Austin in and of itself, right? In the sense that it was always a great college town, great live music, state capital, etc. But Austin itself has grown.
Oh yeah, we've exploded
proportionately in the 21st century. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, no, I moved here in 1990, and there were less than 700, 800,000 in the metro area. And now we're over 2 million.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's huge.
Incredible.
But yes, we still are a good college town, and we still have 6th Street, and we still have lots of young people getting in real trouble. That's why I stay the hell away from 6th Street.
In a good way.
Yeah, I go down to South Lamar to Saxon Pub, where the old folks go.
Oh, JB says Travis County shout out.
That's where Austin is, in Travis County.
Yeah, by the way, guys, feel free to check out Robert's Instagram, Row Watches. I just added him myself. I just followed him on Instagram. So make sure you do that as well. And of course, our familiar faces, Ali Reza and JJ, who came earlier. You can find them more frequently, along with Robert, at JJ's Watch Hangouts. And I'm dropping the link for that in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'm usually just on Sunday evenings, but tonight I decided to stay up late and do his show and do a little bit of yours, although I should probably go here pretty quick because I'm in the central time zone. I don't have the good fortune of having 2 hours earlier like you are, 2 hours earlier than me.
That's true. That's true. But the day is still,
young
still
for you, but the day ends in 36 minutes for me. So
true. Yeah, but thank you so much for coming on the panel.
Yeah, it was fun. And thank you so much. And I'll have to come back more often. On those nights I can stay up late, I'll come back.
Please do. You're always welcome, Robert.
Thank you, sir. You guys have a good evening. Thank you, audience, for sticking with me. I appreciate it. We'll see y'all later.
Thank you, Robert. All right. That was really nice. Guys, don't forget again, please subscribe to JJ's Watch Hangout. And you should also follow Robert on Instagram. And thank you once again, Ali Reza, for your generous super chat. We were talking about new releases. We started talking about the new Tag Heuer skipper, which became a more extended and general conversation on the brand. I think it's one of these moves they are making more recently. Maybe it's it's reached a fever pitch this year, where they have decided to really insist on the technique d'avant-garde part of their branding. And they had always preserved the solo Heuer logo for, of course, for their heritage pieces, legacy reissues. But I think they might be moving on from that even for good. And this might be actually one of the first examples of that new era. This is a watch that basically was inspired by Intrepid's win in the America's Cup in 1967. And if I'm not mistaken, was released in 1969 for the first time as a particular version of the Carrera. It was at that time a 36 millimeter piece and echoed that distinctive Intrepid blue on its dial in the sub registers, in the chronograph registers. And in 2017, at Van Clymer's initiative, basically Hodinkee and Tag Heuer did a limited edition for this watch, which took certain elements of the vintage design, but produced a watch that very much had its own character. You can see the three pieces here, kind of in chronological order. The vintage version, which has that slightly faded, certainly patinated, sun ray brushed blue background. 9 o'clock, a continuous running seconds with a teal background, and the 15 minutes counter, which kind of works as a countdown, because rather than 0, you have 15 there, 10, 5. And then the Hodinkee edition in the middle, which used the heritage case, 39 millimeter from that time, preserving that sunburst or sunray brushed blue dial for the background, and a 30 minutes totalizer at 9 o'clock. It kept the Heuer Skipper branding, but instead of a continuous running seconds subdial, it put a 3 at 3 o'clock a date window, whereas the newest piece is built on the 39 millimeter new glass box Carrera design. At 6 o'clock, you actually have a continuous running seconds, which frames with its alternating orange and white markers a date window at 6 o'clock. A 12-hour counter with a teal background at 9, which carries the Skipper branding. The watch is otherwise branded as Tag Heuer Carrera, and it brings back the 15 minutes countdown register at 3 o'clock. The watch is presented on a leather strap with it has, I think, like a canvas style upper and a calfskin leather liner. and it has a modern self-winding chronograph movement with a skeletonized rotor that, of course, echoes the brand's logo. The movement is called TH20-06 with an 80-hour power reserve. The watch is decently water resistant at 100 meters, and it is priced at $6,750 in US dollars. It's not a limited edition necessarily, but I wouldn't expect to see it in such high numbers either. It might be my throat's tickology, but thank you for letting me know. Let me know if this is any better. Let me know if you hear me. Let me know if you hear me better now, but it may well be my throat. We will figure out in due time. I also wanted to talk about the new releases by Baltic. Since we complained quite a bit about the rising prices when it comes to legacy brands and how entry-level luxury brands have started placing themselves upmarket, pushing their price points in increasingly higher dimensions or realms. Baltic just released 6 different versions of a new diameter, a reduced size for their watches. This is a 36.5 millimeter case that has been just introduced. For both of their HMS line and their bicompax chronographs as well. Their cases were traditionally or more commonly in 38 millimeters, and now both their 3-hander and 2-register chronograph have a 36.5 reduced sized option, and they now have a 2-tone silver dial, which is supremely attractive, a salmon copper tone, again in 2-tone, and a blue gilt. By the way, just to mention, the silver blue, in addition to being a 2-tone silver dial, of course, has blued accents for the dial fixtures, including the hands. And the 2-tone blue dial has a gilt theme contrasting from that background color. And all of these dial colors are ably presented in the chronograph range as well. With the time-only watch costing €360, with additional charge for the bracelets, which is about $60. And for the chronograph, it's €540 with a $60, I believe, again, surcharge for the matching bracelets. It did fix? Okay. Thank you, Technology. In either case, thanks for letting me know. Because sometimes I speak for 5-10 minutes and the microphone is cut or something, and I'm no wiser to it. So thanks for letting me know and getting ahead of it. I appreciate you. I like Baltic. Again, they get a lot of hate, since they have been pretty transparent about how most of their watches are practically made in China and finished in France. But since that sort of business practice is much more under the radar with some of the legacy brands, we always end up singling out uh, these micro brands, these brands that actually offer great value, and nowadays a variety of options for the budding collector, which can be a younger collector or can be just about anybody who is starting out collecting watches. And it's we talk about this every so often. It's a different bug, right? I long sometimes to become a one watch guy, but I don't think that's ever going to happen to me. And if I had better means, I don't think I would have gotten that one watch, that one grail, and be done with it. If I had lesser means, I don't think I would have just gotten a Seiko 5 or Seiko Prospex and called it a day. It's a different kind of passion. But I think also in the same way, no matter what your means, sometimes you want to dip your toes into collecting watches at your own pace, at a lower pace, at a lower price point. And there's never been a better time for that than today, because you have all these brands that offer great watches and so many different styles at $1,000 and less. If you go up to 1.5, there's so much. 15-20 years ago, what is it? You would get a diver watch of some sort at an affordable budget if you wanted to start testing the waters, so to speak, in terms of mechanical watches. Nowadays, you can get great vintage inspired pieces that reproduce at least certain aspects of classic dress watches. You have brands like Baltic, like Fullan Marri, like Dan Henry, that make great vintage inspired chronographs, and that have more recently, like Fullan Marri, building time only pieces with genuine mechanical movements as well. You have other kinds of brands like Unimatic, for example, that has its own design aesthetic, even though they have heaps of vintage inspiration as well. You have Merci Paris, which has their own watch collection, and we are not even getting into again certain brands that have started up marketing themselves in a way, but used to be collectors' favorites at that particular price point, like Oris and others that are now entry level luxury with this current and never ending or seemingly never ending trend of pricing everything $5,000 and higher. But I think Baltic makes a great watch for the price point. I really like them. I think especially this MR01 is a very interesting piece, using that seagull micro rotor movement and a very vintage inspired aesthetic, even though the design clearly is very distinctive with those oversized Plege numerals, as well as the off-center and also oversized subdial for the seconds. And once again, you know, these watches, even though they are at a rather reasonable price point, really have certain aspects that make it hard to believe that it is just a $500, $600 watch. And you might say a lot of these pieces are design heavy and maybe horologically unsatisfying to people who are in the know. I can't deny that, but nevertheless, I also understand that not everyone's enjoyment from a wristwatch is oriented by those horological nuances. And even as someone who enjoys those kinds of horological fine points, I always have room in my collection for watches that I just like looking at, even though I know they're not necessarily finished at a level of quality that we would expect, for example, from a brand like A. Lange und Söhne, which is my next point, and which is the other big brands which released two amazing pieces, two very high level additions to their already existing collections: an 1815 Rattrapante perpetual calendar, a new perpetual calendar split seconds chronograph in white gold with a stunning salmon dial, and a new Lange one time zone in platinum. Let's check them out. And let's start with Lange one time zone, because even though the Lange one time zone has been introduced for quite some time, I don't think it really gets appreciated or even noticed for the most part, because of course Lange one has been the brand's icon, and I still think it is their best-selling watch in terms of sheer numbers. But and of course, you know, people have been amazed, and rightly so, by Lange's chronographs since 1999. With the introduction of Datograph, with the L9511 in-house hand-wound movement that is in and of itself a very architecturally and technically fascinating movement, beautifully finished as well. The time zone kind of flies under the radar. But I think it is a fantastic watch. It's basically their approach to world time, which in its current version has a very intuitive and simplified way of day and night indication for both dials. local time and reference time, right? With the half circle in blue indicating AM and the blank space indicating night, and also has, in a very intuitive way again, a daylight savings time indicator for its cities. So when you cycle through the cities, so when you cycle through the time zones, essentially, if you are pointing towards a time zone which uses daylight savings time, that red will notify you that this is one of the cities that has that adjustment, that has that correction. So that's always helpful and very interesting to see. Of course, otherwise you have the traditional Lange 1 layout with a pusher at 10 o'clock, which will allow you to quickly correct the dates, and the pusher at 8 o'clock, roughly speaking, which helps you cycle through the time zones. This is now the platinum version, which has a rhodium colored dial and has a very sleek, discreet, monochromatic look. Kind of low-key, it's an embodiment of Lange's in-house aesthetic, really, which is about this sort of severe discretion. And I highly appreciate that. Of course, there are small dashes of color on the dial, whether it is in the writing of GMT on the cities ring, the daylight time adjustment indicator in the red as part of that arrow, and of course, these traveling half circles that serve as an AM PM indicator independently for the two dials. Everything else carries the signature design aesthetic of the Lange 1, the asymmetric dial with the primary dial set off center near 9 o'clock with an oversized date around 2 o'clock. Power reserve indicator between that and what is a subdial here dedicated to a reference time, which of course in Lange 1 is an off-center seconds. As you can see, the primary dial has an integrated small seconds subdial as well, so you're not really losing out on that. The case is oh, Kelly, hey, nice to see you. You should jump on sometimes. It'll be fun. On her own time, $9.99. Thank you so much. And guys, check out Kelly's Instagram, where she does most of her work. But I did hear last time she was on JJ's Hangout that she's gonna make a strong comeback on YouTube as well. I think probably on her own channel too. But I also heard on that same show that she is working on a collaboration. I have no idea what it is, but I'm sure it is something that you want to be on the lookout for. So here's a link to Kelly's IG, which you should most certainly follow. And I'm sure you can see any further developments there in terms of how she's coming back to YouTube, in what kind of formats, on which channels, and when exactly. We're all looking forward to that, Kelly, and you're absolutely welcome. So just a quick explanation again. The simultaneous display of two time zones is one of the most useful additional functions in precision watchmaking and is highly valued by globally interconnected watch connoisseurs. Lange und Söhne endowed this complication in 2005 with a distinctive face in the Lange 1 time zone. In addition to home time, this unique timepiece displayed time in a second zone, easily selected thanks to the cities on the city ring representing 24 time zones. Second generation was presented in 2020 with a new caliber and which includes an indication of daylight saving time and the simplified indication for day and night with those rotating rings for each dial, and the platinum case has a rhodium colored solid silver dial, which gives it a kind of severe but also incredibly pleasing monochromatic look. Just 1 second, guys. Please stay put. All right, so sorry about that. Sorry about that. Yeah, so your local time takes the center stage at 9 o'clock, and this reference time is actually what you can advance one time zone at a time with the additional pusher at 8, which again has that integral indication in the arrow. I'm not sure if they had announced a price point for these, but I know it is going to be a boutique exclusive. And once I figure it out, I will be sure to relay it to you. I should get in touch with the Lange boutique here so I can once again pay them a visit. I think they were they were already creeping at $60,000, if I'm not mistaken, in the white gold and pink gold. So, in platinum, who knows? Sky is the limit, right? It's probably 75 or up. I don't know. I'm completely making it up right now because, as it happens, they don't help you at all when it comes to pricing on Lange's website, where most pieces are simply price upon request. But as you can see, the pink gold is priced at $63,000, which makes me believe that the platinum is at least 75, if not more expensive. Next up is actually their perpetual calendar split second chronograph. In a way, ever since they first introduced their double splits chronograph, which of course in German is kind of a stuttering expression because split seconds chronograph is already called Doppel. Since they introduced the double splits in 2004, split second chronograph in and of itself has been kind of a house specialty for Lange. At any rate, I mentioned that they have in so many ways changed the game for high horological in-house chronograph in 1999. In 2004, they introduced the double split, which means that you could not only split the seconds, but also the minutes. And later on, they also introduced the triple splits in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, and the 1814 rattrapante was as a solo split second chronograph. It was only introduced in 2019, I believe. No, in 2019 in honey gold, or maybe in 2020 in honey gold and 2022 in platinum, I want to say. The rattrapante perpetual calendar, I believe, was first introduced in 2013, but this is a pretty unique version of it that combines a stunning white gold case with a salmon tinted dial. And that dial is actually a pink gold dial. So if the Lange 1 time zone that we were looking at a moment ago was actually a silver dial, a solid silver dial, this is a dial that is produced from a pink gold blank. And of course, they treat it in some way or fashion to achieve this particular color. But it is not just some, you know, lacquer painting or galvanization that they use. They actually do start with a pink gold alloy, which makes it perhaps all the more precious and certainly more lively and eye-catching in a certain way. The piece has stunning heat-blued alpha hands for the hour and minutes, which are in so many ways Lange's house style. And the two chronograph hands are distinguished from each other by one being in rhodium plated white gold and the other heat blued. Of course, you have the continuous running seconds at 6 o'clock, which has a sector that is styled like a railroad track, an opening right within it with the moon phase indicator. At 3 o'clock, you have the months encircling the leap year indicator. At 9 o'clock, you have a pointer date which surrounds the day of the week. And at 12 o'clock, you have a 30-minute totalizer, which has in its recess a power reserve up and down style indicator. The dial has itself very moderate blue accents, which are reflected in the writing of the leap year, as well as the quarters for the minutes and seconds, 15, 30, and 45. Right, this is a cool reference. Fourth says Artie Lange. Yeah, that's Artie Lange is like like a comedian, right? I'm not very familiar with his show, unfortunately. Kelly, yes, please, let's do make something happen for sure. That would be nice. So what we're looking at here is basically a new color line for the 1815 perpetual calendar that was already part of the catalog, but was offered with silver dials in 18 karat pink gold as well as platinum. Whereas this limited edition boutique exclusive, I believe, of only 100 pieces is offered in white gold with a stunning pink gold dial. And with a white gold case. I think this is a very good looking, very handsome piece. I'm sure it will sell out very quickly. But the movements, which they don't, do they display it nicely? Not sure. Okay. Right here, you see the two column wheels for both of the chronographs. You see that beautifully decorated free hand engraved balance cock. You see those chronograph bridges, of course, with heat blued screws. And with glacé ribbing on the bridges, some perlage on the base plates too. Can't hurt. Please hit the like button, by the way. That really helps. This is a very small channel, as you guys know. So every single upvote counts. And once again, we don't really have a price point for this watch. I wanna. I don't know. I want to say. Let's see. Once again, we are stumped because it's upon request kind of price point. But I believe this piece is already about $250,000 in pink gold and more or less like that in platinum too, and probably a little more expensive at platinum. So yeah, in white gold in a limited edition, I would probably think that it's more expensive. Lange, by the way, is completely self-conscious at this point, in the sense, or self-aware rather, that they know how desirable some of their limited edition watches are, and they have no qualms, no misgivings about pricing them even out of proportion. I mean, in the sense that they recently introduced the Odysseus chronograph, which in stainless steel with the integrated bracelets, and even with the quite limited nature of it, I think they priced at $150,000, if I'm not mistaken. Again, 100-piece limited edition model. So I don't expect this one to be much cheaper than $300,000 or so. And yes, it is a highly complicated piece. Yes, it is not something that you can find everywhere in every brand. But you know, I like sometimes doing these things. You can go, for example, not that it's an equivalent, right? You know, not that it's the same watch by any means, but you can go to IWC's back catalog, for example, and find something like this at or around $20,000. Of course, you know, there's no exhibition case back. You won't see any high horological finishing or even a completely in-house movement built from the ground up. After all, IWC's bread and butter was at the time, and to a certain extent still is in the realm of chronographs, building modules on the base of the Valjoux 7750, the ever-present workhorse, cam switching, self-winding chronograph movements. And this particular model, which is reference 3751 of the Da Vinci perpetual calendar, is actually a split-second chronograph. So it brings into a single watch both Kurt Klaus's perpetual calendar module and Richard Habring's split seconds module on the Valjoux chronograph. Of course, Habring 2, I believe, still has in its catalog a split second perpetual calendar split second chronograph, even though I'm not entirely sure if they still make it. I'm not entirely sure whether it is still in production. Let me try to pull it up nonetheless. I think their website doesn't work, but I will try to find elsewhere. And this was a piece that you could buy at the time around maybe 22,000 or so. And once again, as interesting, as wonderful as Habring 2 watches are, their finishing is, of course, not at the level of a Lange watch. It's much more austere. It's much more Spartan in a way, but still quite pleasing to the eye, even if just technically speaking. I've always appreciated their watches, their watchmaking, and the kind of personal relationship that they are trying to cultivate with their customers. So that's another watch that you can be on the lookout for. If you don't have about $250,000 to spare on a perpetual calendar split second chronograph, and most of us don't. So that question is pretty much settled. At least we have options, whether it is chasing down Habring 2 perpetual doppel, perpetual calendar split second chronograph, or maybe on the secondary markets, an IWC 3751, which is basically the origin of Habring 2's iteration, since it brings together Kurt Klaus's perpetual calendar module with its split-second chronograph module on the base of the Vajra 7750. But of course, what we are looking at 1815 Rattrapant perpetual calendar is a different beast, both in terms of its design, aesthetics, but most certainly in terms of the quality of finishing and materials, which is at a very different level indeed. Let me get a quick drink of water, everybody, and I'll be right back. Please don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already. It really, really does help. Okay, I'm back. Today we were talking mostly about new releases. We talked about Tag Heuer's new Skipper, which they presented in the new 39 millimeter Carrera glass box case. I wanted to bring very quickly to the screen that lovely shots Hodinky had, which brings into the same frame the vintage example, their 2017 reissue or reinterpretation, and today's release, which signals a revival and potentially also a new way of approaching heritage-inspired pieces under the TAG Heuer brand. This particular piece presented on that hybrid strap is priced at $6,750. We were also looking after that at Baltic, which is an independent micro brand based out of France, and they have just introduced a new case size, 36.5 millimeters, both to their three-hander and two-register chronograph, both their HMS and bicompax lines. The blue gilt, the two-tone salmon with silver accents, and finally the two-tone silver with blue fixtures on the dial, including the leaf-styled hands. These are on the leather strap, 540 euro for the chronograph and 360 for the three-hander. And after that, we have talked about Lange's elite introductions of a couple of pieces in Lange 1 time zone in platinum with a solid silver dial and quite a dignified, stately monochromatic appearance. And for something that is a little more extravagant and even more complicated, there is a model that belongs to Lange's Grand Complication series, the 1815 Rattrapante Perpetual, their perpetual calendar split-second chronograph, now in the white gold case and with a salmon-tinted pink gold dial. The 1815 is really a beautiful design, inspired very much by some of the original pocket watches that were being made by F.A. Lange in the 19th century. I think that concave bezel really sets it apart. It does look fantastic, especially for a chronograph. But in either case, I think Lange does have very beautiful cases with some signature looks. I have to say this 1815 was my favorite release of the day from Lange. Longines came out with some interesting pieces. They have a time with moon phase and a new line of chronographs. So let's take a look at them. I think I'm going to have a 2-hour show tonight. So if you have any questions, if you have any requests that you want to squeeze in, that you want to get addressed tonight, that can't wait until tomorrow, that can't wait until the next show, feel free to send them in before I close. We're looking at the flagship Heritage Moon Phase, which is at that price point, right, that we said is increasingly on a losing ground. But Longines is one of the brands that is holding the fort. And this is a 300 time and date watch that they have further ennobled, that they have further distinguished with a moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock, which is encircled or which is housed within a subdial for the pointer date. Honestly, I like a lot of things about this design. I like the watch to begin with. I think the case has both a kind of substantive look, but also a very well-proportioned aesthetic that gives most of the real estate, or as much real estate as it could, to the dial. I love how they are punning on the flagship with representing a three-masted ship in the form of a medallion on the case back. Kind of reminds me of that Amerigo Vespucci ship that Vachon Constantin used on the overseas case backs up until the most recent generation. Obviously, the flagship collection also literally means that this is the collection. These are the series of watches that in so many ways represent what the brand stands for in terms of timekeeping, in terms of their aesthetic. Listen, I mean, I complain about this even in some of my most favorite brands like AP. The branding is sometimes out of all proportion, right? You know, why is it not enough to write your name once on the dial and be done with it? Or use a consistent logo and let that speak for itself. Here, you know, I'm sure the design department knows better. Who am I to say? But I think Longines signature, Longines logo, and the flagship inscription, it's a little too much. I guess you can say it balances out the subdial in a way. Maybe. Again, maybe I don't know any better. I feel it's overdone. That's why I said earlier when we were on JJ's channel, I actually like the new 37 millimeter AP Royal Oaks quite a bit. The 15550, because there's just one logo, which is the signature. That's it. It just says Audemars Piguet, slightly larger than how they used to write it. That's it. No initials, no other stupid inscription like automatic or self-winding or this or that or whatever, just you're done. We know, especially at Royal Oak, is such a watch that you don't need to brand it anymore. People know what it is when they see it. Now, Longines flagship might not be such a model, but it, in my opinion, it doesn't need three logos plus automatic on the dial. If this is to be the representation, the most distilled expression of what Longines stands for in 2023, it is supposed to be more pure in terms of the dial. All of that being said, I love that they brought into the picture a moon phase indicator. I think that is absolutely beautiful. I used to be one of those people who never understood what the moon phase was about. I kind of forgot that a lot of times the medium is the message, that it's not about anything, that it's absolutely obsolete. And that is why it is absolutely beautiful as well. I'm not, um, I'm not necessarily making light of the fact that a lot of cultures, a lot of important global cultures, and religious rituals still revolve around the lunar calendar. Don't take me wrong. But to have a moon phase indicator on the dial of the watch is absolutely unnecessary. But perhaps because of that, it's also quite beautiful and rather extravagant. And for this particular model line, Longines decided to match the moon phase with the fixtures on the dial. For example, on this model, where you have everything rhodium plated, it picks off on those colors, on those dial fixtures. Where did we go? Whereas with the gilt accents, you have it matching with those dial fixtures. And then you also have a version with a blue sunburst dial, which once again has rhodium plated fixtures, which are matched by the shade of the moon as well. These are pieces that are, again, very traditionally proportioned, 38.5 millimeter. Because of the angles of the lugs and the relatively slender bezels, you have a lot of nice real estate for the dial, which serves this particular dial well, this particular watch really well, I should say. I'm a huge fan. I could, if I were to nitpick, I would try to make the watch a little more minimalistic. Let's have as much attention as we can on the moon phase. So get rid of that script for automatic, get rid of that script for flagship. You already have on the on the case back, you already have the medallion and the inscription. You don't need anything more than Longines on the dial, if you ask me. You don't need that logo even. The watch is 12.4 millimeters thick, all in stainless steel, with a solid case back, and it is priced, I believe, right around 3,050 in US dollars. Once again, it is available in 3 variations: silvered with this sort of silver monochromatic appearance, even with the bracelet matching, gilt accents presented on a dark brown strap, and a blue one matching strap with a blue sunburst dial. That is very stunning. I think I would go with the monochromatic one as much as I could for this particular release. But that being said, I actually am quite excited about the Longines, the new Longines Conquest sports chronograph, which I believe is a very handsome looking watch. Again, I have my personal gripes with it. I would have loved to see it in a more compact case sizing. But overall, I'm sure it's not that scandalous at 42 millimeters. The thickness is right over 14 as well. Conquest has been quite traditionally Longines' sporty line, and they have had very interesting chronographs in the past, especially, again, speaking to Longines' history of being official timekeeper in sporting events, especially in the Olympics. When you go to the past, it is a chronograph that has 100 meters of water resistance, which is quite respectable for the genre. It's super attractive in this Panda dial version, which has just the right amount of extra color on the dial in the manner of red and red-tipped hands for the chronograph functions, as well as the writing of the tachymeter on the bezel, which is a ceramic insert. Watch is again 42 millimeters in diameter, 14.3 millimeters in thickness. And has that fixed bezel with a ceramic insert, black on the Panda version, as well as the inverse Panda, not to mention the Champagne Panda. And there's also a kind of deep blue version which matches a two-tone blue dial with a blue ceramic bezel. And the Conquest 2023 is priced again at that pocket, this time a little higher than that time date moon phase piece. At $36,050, $3,650, 3650 I meant, 3650, 3,650 in all the different variations, the champagne panda, the reverse panda, panda, and all blue everything, which makes Longines a very attractive proposition for the sports chronograph. They already had a very strong series in the navigation big eye. As you can see, which has the stainless steel classic flyback chronograph with the big eye minute totalizer at 3 o'clock. It has, and that is $3,000 at 41 millimeters. Perhaps it is a more conservatively sized and attractive proposition for many enthusiasts. And at a slight markup, still under $4,000, for $3,850, they have a smoked blue dial for this titanium version. Again, I think for the flyback chronograph, it is such an attractive proposition. I feel I might put this ahead of Breguet's new offerings even. Nice. All right, JB, thank you. The last question of the night, perhaps, unless someone else is going to add something. Jake Brooks asks, I'd love to hear what you think of the 126713 on Jubilee, the GMT Gray. Could you call this one the Honeybee? Why not? We used to call, to distinguish the old two GMT masters from each other, we used to call the black dial version the Bumblebee. The Bumblebee was a nickname given to that watch before it became perhaps slightly more popular for a two-tone Submariner with a black dial. But I mostly knew the 16713 with the black dial as the Bumblebee. So if I call it Honeybee, be my guest. I think that's not a bad nickname at all for the new two-tone GMT master by Rodex. Let's pull it up. What do I think? Look, I think I'm going to go against my own instincts here and try to take the professor's position. And I'm dying to have him come back to the show. I really miss him, and hopefully he will participate again when he feels is the right time. I like two-tone watches. You know how much I love them. You know how I have my 16753, which is the first Rolex I bought with my own money. Uh, I was at that time very emotionally invested into that watch. I still am. At that time, it was a lot of money for me, um, even though it was at that point probably the dog of the entire range. It was trading for even cheaper than the 16570, which is, of course, the Polar Explorer 2, which I acquired later. I really think that they belong to a time, right? So for me, to get something two-tone from the 80s, it feels just right. I know it's coming back, but I feel it's just a way of having the prices creep up a little bit. Um, to be honest, I find this execution of the two-tone somehow more attractive than the so-called new root beer, which I never quite liked. Um, but is it something I would go for over a stainless steel GMT Master, over the so-called Batman or Batgirl, or even a Pepsi? I don't think so. Um, and again, I was never someone who considered being offered the chance to purchase a Rolex watch at retail a privilege. So I will not say, hey, they're offering me a Rolex, let's not turn it down, uh, even though it is not necessarily what I want to buy, but something I can live with. The only the only way I can, and we talked about this behind the scenes too, actually, JB, the only way I can somehow justify this is if you are really working on your relationship with a particular authorized dealer, you feel invested in it, you really expect them to deliver on a high ticket piece for you, and you should treat this purchase absolutely as, hey, I wasn't really after this. It's a cool watch. I'll take it off your hands because I'm interested in working with you. I really want that Daytona. I really want that particular day date. I really want this. Um, I want a his and her um, Everose Yachtmaster, for me and my wife, 4037. And I'm doing you a favor. So this is the attitude that what you should take, I think, at this dip of the market, which is absolutely in shatters still. This is what you should do. Make it clear to your authorized dealer, I'm willing to take this off your hands. I am doing you a favor with the expectation that you will do me a favor down the line, and really sooner than later. That's my only way of saying yes to um, that GMT Master 2. Otherwise, do not get it. Because I know, JB, if you liked it so much, if you really loved it, you wouldn't even be asking me. I know that about you. So if you are going back and forth, if you're hesitating, it means that you are not 100% sure. If you are not 100% sure, but you think it looks better than what you expected, it feels better than what you expected, let them know that. Again, this is not what I had in mind. I thought, I came to see that Daytona we were talking about the other day. But hey, this is a cool watch. I'll take it off your hands. If it greases the wheels, there's nothing wrong with letting them know that. Even if you would be actually happier than you would let on acquiring that watch, right? Play it down a little bit. Play it down. Let them know that you are doing them a favor, because you really want that next watch much, much more. But yeah, I could never justify the jump in terms of the price point when it comes to outright precious metal. But the two-tone is not actually an extravagant markup. It is somewhat justifiable. And if you actually like the watch, and if you think it is actually doing some work in helping you get ahead in terms of what you really want from them, by all means, you should go for it. Okay, this is it for tonight. Thank you again so much for your interventions, interjections, and contributions from the chats, your questions. As always, my deep felt gratitude to everyone who super chatted: JB, Honor on Time, Kelly, and Alireza, the Squatch Box. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to hit the like button on your way out. If you have any questions, if you have any requests, any ideas for future shows, feel free to email me here. It is now in the rolling ticker, Lord Hellespont V at gmail.com. That is Lord Hellespont V at gmail.com. If you would like to contribute to the channel, and any contribution is highly appreciated, since this is a channel that is completely and absolutely independent and fully at the behest of its audience. You know how. You have all these links. I think the gift memberships have all been spoken for since I introduced the memberships, but the monthly rate, I think, is very reasonable. So feel free to sign up yourself. And as Ali explained earlier, that basically brings to you all these top-heavy market digests from the archives, where I present at least on 3 different watches on a daily basis in my Patreon channel. The YouTube membership provides you access to 3 new videos every week, 12 videos per month at that rate. And if you get the higher level of membership, that actually provides you the same kind of benefits at as the Patreon, which means that you will receive on a daily basis a new video that is curated, that focuses on a specific genre, specific category, complication, brand, or model, where I direct you towards value propositions, where I lead you to watch deals online, but I always do that with an eye to historical and horological detail. So even if you don't necessarily want to take advantage of those deals at the time, you will always end up learning something or another. So check it out. If the YouTube membership is a way of easing into that for you, take a look. In either case, I appreciate your support. You have always been great to me. So if I can do anything to pay back, I'm happy to be here on a regular basis. I may or may not be here tomorrow night. But if not, I will catch up with you during the weekend and somehow make it up to you. I will see you soon. Take care until then. Goodbye.